Hi, and good afternoon to everyone who's joined us today on all of our platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. A very, very warm welcome to you from a very cold and stormy Johannesburg. This is episode 5 of our weekly podcasts, and welcome Anissa, welcome Cole. And we have a very, very esteemed guest today who is joining us and with an extremely interesting topic. So without much ado, I'll hand over to Anissa and you can introduce our amazing guest for this week.
Thank you so much, Jamila. And thank you, Cole, for honoring us with your presence here today. It's really good to have you. And I know before we went on live, I said, I'm going to read this very impressive bio, and I'm putting Cole on the spot. And he's like, no, don't read it all. And I'm like, but why not, right? So this is the epitome of the grit, grace, gratitude journey and what you've accomplished. So for those that are joining us after watching the replay, thank you. And we value your comments as well. And again, I would like to also extend a warm welcome to those that are here. Your interaction is always valued. So without further ado, Henry Cole Davids. Cole is the founder of Youth Unplugged, while serving as non-executive director on a variety of private sector concerns, such as the Growth Sure Group. I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this right, Yalda, South Africa, Tehila Community Collaborative, and Western Cape Missing Persons Unit. He was appointed as member of the Board of Advisors on the Rhodes University Institute of Social and Economic Research and is currently pursuing his PhD in social science. Rather you than me, Cole. Cole Davids currently mentors a vast number of young entrepreneurs on the African continent, ranging from youth in and about 10 different countries. He is currently the CEO of the Pillar 5 Group, which functions as an empowering call center in the Western Cape, supporting small, medium, and micro enterprises, whilst providing wellness programs for a variety of corporates. He has been featured on, I just said to him before we joined, he's an old hand at these type of interviews. He's been featured on our local South African SABC talk show called Drawing the Line, ETV, another, for those that are international, another local channel called ETV called XE, that's Afrikaans for those that wonders what that is. Cake Net, also an Afrikaans show called Duidelike Dapper. And you're going to talk a little bit maybe about this. New York Times, for those that are in New York, nominated by Parable magazine among the top 10 most influential young Christian leaders in 2014. Special guest lecturer at Harvard University, delegate and speaker at Africanism Business Conference at Harvard and Boston, USA. Special guest lecturer at Oxford University, again, also delegate and speaker. And then delegate at Billionaire Roundtable Commonwealth Economic Yearly Summit held in the Bahamas. And celebrates being a Young African Leadership Institute alumni. Without further ado, so welcome. So the topic of today is men unmute. And we said we're going with this topic because men find it very difficult to share their feelings, speak about their emotions or their journey, and do not ask for help. Over to you, Jamila, if you want to pose ahead with the first question.
Yes, sure. And I just wanted to let you know, Cole, that I'm so interested in hearing what you've got to say, because as a mom of a young man, I would love for him to be able to express how he feels, especially if he's in a relationship with whatever he's going through. So I'm really, really excited to hear what you have to say about the topic, and also your view on how young men out there are faring with regards to this. On that, how do you define grit in your life? And can you share an example perhaps of a situation where your grit was put to the test?
Well, thank you for the opportunity, ladies, and thank you for reading most of that biography. I had to keep my breath up for that whole experience. Um, I think growing up in a very diverse family, I found myself, only 3 years ago, I found out that my father is actually from a Malawian descent, and my grandmother is from a Sotho descent, but I grew up in a more what you call a colored community. And so now you're growing up and you seem like you look like something and sound like something else. And you're trying as a young man to find this, where do I fit in? Who do I partner with? What group do I flow with? How do I supposed to speak and dress? And I think where I think that grit really hit was when I was a young boy standing in front of my mom's house, and a lot is happening within the home at that time. Real father walked out, stepfather's in the house. And I think this realization hit me, and I said, listen, there must be more to life than this. It's not hallelujah that came out of heaven. It's not something that happened, the thunder hit me and whatever. It's a realization that hits you, which I think goes very closely with what you were born to do on the earth. Not only you coming on the earth and thinking I'm some kind of biological accident. So for me, it was a bit of a huge turning point, and me asking that question to myself. Listen, there must be more to life than this, than what I'm seeing at the moment. Key point, turning point, and I think from there a lot more questions and realizations followed.
Okay. Want to respond, Jamila?
Yeah, I think, it's so important to find your place and your purpose in life. And once you do, it just propels you forward to accomplish that which you are meant um, to be here, to provide, to be of service to others. And I can totally relate to you as well, with that feeling of not really fitting in, coming also from a mixed race family. You don't quite know where your place is actually. And with that comes a lot of challenges. It comes with a lot of soul searching as well, to find out who Jamila really is. What does she stand for? What is she here to do? What is her service, her purpose in life? So I can understand from your perspective, the difficulties.
Yeah, and I think
Definitely.
also what, if I could maybe just add, when I spoke to Anissa regarding this topic, and I'm listening to that first question, part of when you're sitting in front of the television and you press that mute button, the people are still talking. Everything is still going on as per normal, but you can't hear what they are saying. And I think a
Mhm.
lot of young men found themselves or are finding themselves in that space where life is going on as per normal. But do you understand what I'm saying? I am busy speaking, but the language barrier I'm using, it's not something that you were hearing. It was many years ago where I wrote a little article called How to Speak Female Fluently. Please do not ask me to what did I put in there. I thought I knew how to speak female fluently. I failed, by the way. But I think it's that space where that television is muted, the action is going on, people are crying, dying, flying, whatever's happening, but no one is hearing. And now we are sitting with this space of assuming. I think he's saying this. I think that is normally his body language. Normally, if someone does this, they mean that. And I think this is why this topic is so close to me. It's me saying, man, it's time that we unmute, not someone else unmute that remote for you.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, Cole, what you're also referring to, just to stay with this first question, is you alluded to that sense of belonging, not really knowing where you fit, and language being one of it, but there's sort of the cultural difference. There's probably also the faith difference, and talk to us about how you navigated that in the midst of finding out at that late stage that you actually were cross-cultural, cross-faiths, maybe even. I'm not even sure. I'm just wanting to get some clarity on that.
I think how I navigated through that was sometimes if you drive on a street, you'll find that you will put on your GPS because you would love to navigate to a certain space. And you'll say, listen, I'm currently wanting to go to 4th Street. But I think one of the earlier things I started doing right was I started first understanding where I am. A lot of us want to navigate and understand where we are going, but in order for that GPS to work effectively, if I do not know where I am, I might be on my way somewhere, but I cannot explain where I came from. I cannot explain how I got here. I cannot explain the journey. And then eventually I become like that board. If you drive from Cape Town to Johannesburg, there's a board in Beaufort West that tells you exactly how many kilometers to get to Johannesburg. But that board has never been to Johannesburg. That board has been standing there for millions of thousands of years, but it's never been there. And I realized that I did not want to do that. I did not want to be one of those boards that gives this direction, but I've never been there. The process is hectic when you actually have to say, where am I now? What am I doing now? What am I thinking now? And I think a man unto his own thoughts is a danger unto himself. Because when we get into that box, into that little space that we create, young or old, we can be in the room, in the space, in the marriage, in the relationship, in the church, and we could be gone. And so here I'm a young boy, blindfolded, feeling my way through, church, sexuality, finding space in terms of tradition, because my uncle said, listen, you guys should go to the bush because this is your background. Growing up in Alsis River, then moving to Johannesburg, then moving to the Northern Cape, and I have to find myself. And then I said, listen, I have to take this blindfold off, because right now I am walking towards my future with my eyes on my past. And sometimes I think the biggest stumbling block there is we fear tomorrow, we regret yesterday, but we forget to appreciate the now, the power of where I am now. And even if it's a mess, one of my biggest philosophies is I'm a mess, and every day I try to be less of a mess so I can be a message to someone else. And I'm okay with waking up tomorrow morning and being a mess again and try to be less of a mess so I can be a message, because at the end of the day, your words is your message to people. Sorry, your life is your message to people, not your words. And I think that was how I started navigating and saying, it's time to be real now. It's time to be the real, authentic you. And if they don't like it, that's what it is.
Okay.
I think that's so important. It's a very important point that you brought up, is that you have to acknowledge where you are and who you are right now in the present moment. And only then can you then propel yourself and provide the action required to move you to the space that you need to be or want to be at. But Anissa, we've spoken about this, week in and week out, and it's about coming back to self and being present, being in the moment, and just understanding who you truly are and appreciating that. And from there on working, I also believe that, we are diamonds. We're diamonds, and we get all these layers on top of us. And as you call it, it's a mess. But it's about shedding all those layers to then reveal that beautiful, valuable, priceless being that we are.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Jamila, I'd like to just acknowledge the guest interaction or the comments that are there. Thank you for joining us, Rui Marquez. He says, wonderful. Then we have got Johnny that has said, what is your take on peer group pressure as well as children. I think he means not playing outdoors enough. That's the first thing. And then our chef, thank you as always for your support and joining us yet again. What is the purpose of it all? Cole Davids is a powerful question when asked in the moment. Full view observation, he says. Then he says the power of now is a perfect place to be, a perfect place to take the first step. And whilst there's maybe one more comment. No, I think that's it. So would you like to respond to that from Johnny? What is your take on peer group pressure as well as children not playing enough outside?
I think we need to understand that if I were to give all of us in this room similar ingredients, I would give all of us some kind of stove. I'll give you the electricity, and I say, guys, all of you make a pot of soup. Although we have the same ingredients and the same resources, at the end of the day, the way you see or how you perceive or how you want that soup to taste is how you will add those ingredients eventually, how long you'll have that pot on the stove. And this is what happens within homes. Sometimes within homes, the peer group pressure happens within the home as much as what it happens outside of the home. Sometimes we look at our siblings. For example, I've got a sister and I've got a brother, and they have kids as well. And the first pressure is from the parent that says, this is how I am supposed to do parenting as per how my parents did it, as per how my family used to do it. And eventually when that young person goes out and have to face the real world and have to face what is really calling out there, he sits in a world where he's asking him, but where's ABC that I learned at home? I think when we look at our schooling system right now, our schooling system is teaching our kids how to remember and not how to think critically. And so now they end up university, get the biggest shock when they hit university, they do not know how to think. It should not be the case at home. At home should be that space where the first place where the peer pressure should actually be introduced and also explained is within the home, is to put that little bit of pressure on that character, especially if it's a young man. I think sometimes when it comes to the not being outdoors, I strongly am not for that. I believe you should be out there seeing what's happening out there, because eventually if you do not make the child's world bigger, someone else will. Someone else will come to your daughter and say, do you know AB? If you go to if all you do with your children is go to school, home, church, shop in one city, go play little games, go to Spur, and then come home. And that's the routine. One day someone comes to your young man or some young girl and say, do you know there's something called Camps Bay? Do you know there's something called Nando's? But because the world wasn't bigger, he feels that pressure because the world wasn't made big enough at home. And so it doesn't cost a lot to say, let me take him to something that he has not seen. So when the world asks a question of my child's character, that he would be better prepared. If you were a father listening to the show, I would suggest take your daughter on a little date and sit her down, because one day she will be on a date, and let her dress like a little princess. If you're a mother watching the show, take your young man not only to a soccer match, but take him out to a space where he's one day going to be that leader and sitting across from you, and see how he treats a young lady. That is making their world bigger, because peer pressure is inevitable. It's going to happen in church. It's going to happen at school. It's going to happen in government. It's going to happen, within a corporate context, wherever they find themselves. But how big did you make their world? And so that is my response to that.
Okay. So I think what I'd like to bring it back to from my side, and Jamila, I'd like for you to chip in if there was anything you want to add, but this leads us to the next question. What are those strategies or mindset shifts that helped you maintain that resilience in the face of those challenges along the way? Because not knowing where you fit in this identity and this lack of belonging, and having to rediscover that and be in the present at that young age and have that level of awareness is not yet developed, right? So how did you overcome it? Did you have mentors? Were there church leaders that you could rely on? And what would you tell the audience here today on how to navigate it, other than just focusing on the now?
I think definitely mentors played an absolutely crucial role. There comes a time that when you as a parent have to let that child go outside, and your hope should be that you have seeds in the ground, that you've done well to humanity, that will also be well with your family. There's only so much that you can do, but you have to let them out. And I think that I have a mother who have so much seeds in the ground that there was always someone that I could run to at the worst or lowest time within my life. Someone that's going to listen, not judge, not ask 10,000 questions, try to figure it out. Someone that was sensitive, not suspicious. Very important. As a young man, the worst place that you can run to is a detective that is in a human form called a coach or a mentor, but you want to be more detective and be suspicious than be sensitive. Sometimes as a young man, all I needed was someone to listen. I was told it wasn't good to cry until a mentor told me, do you know that the first sign of life was when you cried? And if you cry in front of me, it shows me that you're alive. And I was like, oh, wow, I forgot that. And it was all these light bulb moments that really helped within these coaching, mentoring, and just really journeying with someone, walking with someone. You know what was one of the best was when I have a low moment. I've been at a space where I tried to take my life more than 6 times. So I would normally message someone as a young man to say, I'm in that space now. And he would have a response. That was so amazing. No judgment, no solution. Listen and just hold space for me. That used to help me so much, because I used to tell him, I want to do some bad stuff now. I'm in a bad space. I don't need you to give me 10 scriptures. I don't need you to preach for me. You can pray for me later. Right now, I just need your voice. I need your presence. And I need to know that you have my back. And that was so crucial for me.
Sure. Jamila, you'd like to respond?
That's so strong and powerful, Cole, and I really appreciate that. But what I want to ask you is that, it's what about those people who don't have that in their spaces? What about those young men and women who don't have those mentors, or who don't feel like there's anyone there to hold space for them? How do you think they should navigate around this? Or how do you think we can provide some source of support, maybe? I know back in the day, feeling so lost and misplaced because of who I was in the community, and I just felt like I was never accepted. I was never a part of, or I was never authentic enough to be a part of the community. And I really, really felt quite alone. And coming from a small town, there's not very many people that you could talk to. But fortunately for me, I think maybe with reading and later on in life with finding certain people who did just exactly that, just held the space to hear me out, that in itself set me on my path to healing, set me on my path to accepting who I was instead of questioning why didn't I fit in. And I think that your point about parents, allowing their children to be exposed to certain things, to be to know and to experience what life is out there is of extreme importance. For me, my dad was extremely protective of me. And I feel like when I finally went out into the real world and left that cocoon that my mom and dad provided, and out of love, purely just out of love, I didn't feel equipped enough to be able to face the world out there. So that was also another extra challenge that came my way. What are your thoughts on that?
I think sometimes we do find ourselves in that space where we believe there is no one that can hold that space for us. And then it's important for that young man to have some kind of goal and some kind of vision. Why is this important? You see, people with no vision always fight for the position. You fight for the position in the home. I want to be heard. You fight because you want to belong. You wanna fit in because there's no vision. You see this happen a lot within corporate spaces, religious spaces. People with no vision always fight for position. For that young man, it's important to give up who you are for who you want to become. You have to give up who you are. You do not give yourself up to become someone else or to fit in for someone else. You give up, saying, if I'm looking at myself in the mirror saying, when I come back here 6 months from now, I'm taking a photo of this moment. I take so much notes. I take so much photos of my current state. So I always compare to where I am, for say 3 or 4 months later. So giving up who you are for who you want to become, enabling a vision for yourself and saying, this is where I see myself. Regular stock taking. Listen, reflections is crucial. If there's not someone to speak to, find a space in your house, find a space at the beach. That is so crucial. Building lasting relationships is amazing. Sometimes it's not with the person that you think you would build it. And sometimes it's taking that risk, it's going into a space of uncomfortability. Listen, we are never going to reach unity by holding hands and singing Kumbaya. We're going to reach that unity by actually having some uncomfortable discussions. And so I believe that there's a lot of us men, because we didn't deal with a young boy, we are now men in houses, now sitting with wives and children and all of these things, but the boy has not healed. The boy is still crying out. The little Cole is saying, hello, I'm still crying for my daddy not being there. This is why I can't rear this boy. This is why I don't know how to love you as a woman. You're asking me to do something that I was never taught at home. I mean, it's so amazing if a couple can forgive each other for what you were never taught at home, for example. So I think that is crucial in that space. And then lastly, it's a lot of us, eventually, if we haven't dealt with it, we walk around with what I call this cupboard syndrome. It's this cupboard that we have with all these different jackets in it. Now, these are deep secrets right now. If the men is on here, I'm sorry, I have to tell these ladies right now. We have this cupboard with all these jackets, and it's a jacket for my father, how my father was there or not there, a jacket, my father jacket. Then it's my I hate life jacket. Then it's, for example, I am now at my happiest moment jacket. Then it's a jacket of I have money and I'm the biggest dude and I'm the sexiest guy in the world. So we pull this cupboard with us for years. And we always switching to different jackets, and it happens with women as well. And eventually we get so tired because now we don't know which one to switch to for the current circumstance, to how to overcome it. And then you find yourself at a place of relapse and saying, who am I? What have I been doing? And you're 40 years old and you're looking back and you're saying, what have I done with my life? So, yeah, I think that's a place to start, because that's eventually where you end up if you don't start from there.
So I'd like to come in here because there's another very valid question, and I think it's, Johnny, you and I are aligned in our thinking as Cole was talking, and Jamila's question around what if there is no help? What if they don't have that safe space? And I know having a 16-year-old who has threatened suicide, who has self-harmed, and has a circle of friends that does exactly that. And I've shared before publicly that being through a conscious uncoupling, it's neither here nor there. Kids find it so difficult that divorce makes them their entire identity be lost. So Johnny's question, we can get back to it shortly. I just want to acknowledge some of the other comments that are coming through. But he raises a valid question. Do you believe young men, I don't know why Johnny's saying of 23 who threatened suicide actually carry it out, but just from our own personal experience, anybody that threatens suicide, from a professional's feedback to me in my own experience with my son was that it's a cry for help. It's a cry for help of wanting attention, wanting to be heard, wanting to feel understood and acknowledged. And so not sure how to get that outlet out there. Um, then there's Tabela Mete. I'm not sure if anyone knows Tabela there. She says, great engagement. Ronald says, it's quite long. He says, preach. People look for love and acceptance elsewhere. Job, low lives, addiction. He also says, as a child, I grew up interested in science and inventors. I won Science City fairs, but was not scholastically efficient by any means. I did not know how to learn and study to speak in class. I was lacking self-esteem and self-esteem. No, later got heavily involved in STEM. Hundreds of children, self-motivated, working with teachers in university. I was still emotionally challenged though, still driven to go out, facilitate, provide out of, I can't, it doesn't actually allow me to look at that further, Ronald, but that was quite a powerful comment there. And I'm just looking to see if there are any more. But I'd like you to come back to your comment, Cole, around wanting to take your own life nearly 6 times. Was that in the early stages of your adolescent life? Was it in your adult life? And you've said that you reached out to people to support you. Do you want to respond, though, to Johnny's question from your lens and experience?
I'm gonna give a very weird response. Anyone that threatens suicide, um, something has already then at that moment died and needs to be revived.
Mhm.
A lot of us men are walking the earth, and I would almost say asleep or dead, because we have become deaf to the truth. We've become blind to the authentic self. And so if you get to the space of suicide, then it's the cry for y'all. I want to be heard, but then it's also what has switched off. What light switched off inside of you? Because when that comes and that thought hits, the mind already says, I see myself in the coffin. The mind says, I don't want to be on this earth. The mind says, I don't see how I make a difference. I don't see that they're going to miss me. I don't see that they will even notice that I'm not here. And so something has died, something has switched off. And I think the first part of that, my answer is, I want to bring us to the realization that a lot of us young men, or young men, first of all, are roaming the earth blind, deaf, are roaming the earth, and there's things that is shut down. And the TV is playing. Everything looks normal, but there's nothing happening. There's no real outlet to what is happening with inside of that person. Did I reach out to someone first? No, I didn't. I think we go into that, but okay, for me personally, it was a pity party mode where I was so pitiful for, why am I here? Why is no one noticing me? And then I had to move from pity party to pit stop, to say, when a pit stop happens in a Formula One race, you do go out of the race, you go change some tires, you stop, you put some new fuel in, but you have to get back into the race, which allowed me to go into that space and sometimes say, oh, I feel so depressed. I'm not well. But I said to myself, it's a pit stop. You have to get back out there. Because sometimes if you stay there too long, it becomes a habit that this is where I run into, and this is where I find solace, and this is where I find my solutions. So do they actually carry it out? Yes, they do, definitely. But I always ask, what brought you there? What was the trigger? What was the thought or final thought that brought you to the conclusion to say that this life that I didn't give myself, I will now take it? And so I always, I want to end my part to this question and say to a person that feels like that, that number one, you do make a difference. oh my word, will we miss you if you're not there. You actually, your words, the way you dress, the way you walk, the way you talk, as messed up as we think we are, you make a difference. And there's people in your street that would miss you. There's people in your home that will miss your voice. And sometimes that is what we miss, is the fact that I would just be gone, and even and life would go on as per normal. So yes, they do, but there's always a way out. There is a solution if you are willing to say, SOS, I need some help.
And I think, it's also coming to the understanding of being kind to yourself as well, and accepting that in life there's going to be lots of challenges. Cole, you've had 6 attempts, but here you are standing stronger than ever, I suppose, now, because you've gone through it and you've gone back, like you say, to self and understand where you are now, so that you are able to move forward to where you want to be or where you should be in your life. And I think it's just very, very important for us to always remember to be kind to ourselves. And it's like you say, of course you make a difference. Of course you will be missed. Of course there's an impact that you leave around with the people that are around you. And sometimes we miss that.
No, that's very true. And maybe I just want to add as well, I think part of saying, men, it's time to unmute, is let's have these uncomfortable discussions. I want to applaud women that's watching the show as well. I was reared by a single mom. When I go on the stage and I speak at the women's event, the first thing I say is, I am my mom. I am my grandmother. I am because of them. I am not here because of a father that sticked around. My daddy didn't stick around. My mother did. She persevered. Single, broke, hurt, abused. She persevered. So there's mothers out there that you are not a man. You might never understand what is all the things happening in that young man's mind, but be there. As long as you're there, there's hope. If I could make it with a single mom and I'm still going strong, now helping other young men, I want to encourage even a woman saying, but what if I don't have an uncle or a grandfather or someone that I trust around my boys? Well, then hold space. Be there. Create an enabling environment for him to be him. Sometimes us men have weird habits. And if you're a single mommy out there, you know what I'm talking about. We have habits that you feel like you want to put us out every day of the house. And sometimes it's the tolerance and the patience and just allow him to be him. He'll come there and ask you the weirdest question, do the weirdest thing, and you'll think, is this boy from Mars or something? I don't get him. You're not supposed to always get him. Just allow him to be him. And if that environment is there, the appreciation that he brings when he realizes who is holding space for him, wow. And the way he appreciates young girls, wow. So just a note on that.
I agree with you totally on that, Cole. Do we still have Cole? Seems to be frozen on the side.
He's frozen with all that passion that he's just expressed. While we're waiting for him, let's just acknowledge more of the comments again. Ashif says, many jackets is a problem. Authenticity is minimal. Ronald says, the 2 young men are taking me to lunch today with their parents. The parents are well-to-do, yet the father said to me years ago, thank you for being with my sons when I could not be there. I was among them wearing a 3-piece suit, Ronald says, and wingtips under the corporate umbrella used by organizations. Oh, we all know that all too well. He says, I will listen to this again. I like the resonance and the passion, Cole. He says, I continue to make a difference. A man still thanks me for saving his life. He was going to take it. I need to hear this message for me and others. Cole, you struck a chord. So I want to just say thank you. Thank you for that deep acknowledgement to us single moms. It struck a chord for me because it is quite difficult being a single mom of three, and you sometimes feel like you just want to give up. You can't anymore. Like, how do you just persevere amidst the insanity that comes from especially teenage boys that are really trying to find that identity and don't know how to articulate it? So, and I mean, my daughter's a teenager, she's 13, and yet I have a similar situation with her where she's not very expressive either. So I don't think this is just linked to a particular, whether it's male or female. I think it exists wherever. And I like what you said earlier on. It's that little girl inside and that little boy that is just wanting to return back to that essence, to that joy, to feeling loved and like they are divine beings. They were meant to be here, regardless of where they come from or who they belong to. So just in closing, I'll read one final comment and then we need to go on to the next question, Jamila. But Carmen Prince says, thank you to Cole for his frankness and making a difference. What is that one thing that can move a man from pitiful to hopeful? I like that question. Maybe before we head into our question, do you want to respond to that?
We have a department in South Africa called Home Affairs. And whenever you have lost your ID or your ID is damaged, you have to go stand in a line. Now, everybody would know Home Affairs lines are long. And you got to stand there, and eventually you get inside, and there's a lady that's behind the counter. Now, listen very carefully. That woman, as much as you are frustrated, imagine her. She's been helping thousands with different excuses, different reasons, different irritations. And so the pitiful space is where sometimes the person on the other side, being the parent or whoever, or sometimes in the home, is saying, I got to give you identity, but do you know that I just came from work right now? Do you know that I'm still dealing with my own little boy in me? And you standing in this queue. I know I got to do this because I work here. I'm your mom. I'm your dad. I'm this. I'm the pastor. I'm supposed to do this. But I'm tired myself. On the other side, the person saying, but you like the only place I can get this. So the move between pitiful to hopeful is patience, first of all. It is not going to happen overnight. It is a process. There was someone who started the business that would stand in the queue for you at Home Affairs, and you can actually pay this person so you don't have to do the long queue. And so he'll be there, and then when it's your turn, you'll go. I love the concept because it means that I'm in the process, I'm in the queue, I'm not going through all those, but when I get to the front, but here's the key. When you eventually get that ID though, your ID says from South Africa, but the ID does not say where you're going. I have never seen an ID that says going to Durban, going to the US. When eventually you get to that space where you find now, listen, I have been so down. I've been in this pity party mode. It is you that determines where I am going. It is not what happens. It's not mommy that can determine that. It's not the pastor that preaches on a Sunday. It's not your government. It is not, your mentor. It is eventually coming back to you that now says, I now have a better understanding of who I am. But where do I listen? Where do I see myself going? I say to people, you cannot do anything you put your mind to. You can only do as per according to your purpose. Be careful if you do everything that your mind tells you. You're going to find yourself doing everything and achieving nothing. People have to go on stages and say, you can't do anything. Yes, hold on. You can do as per your purpose. And so from that pitiful place to hopeful place is the patience. And secondly, it's looking in the mirror and being so real and saying, this is who I am, this is what I have, and this is what I'm about.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. You talked about Home Affairs, but I was there this week. And exactly what you described, Cole, I felt so terrible for the three officials that were doing the best they can and were going above and beyond. Excuse me. But the noise, the complaints, and the fights were insane towards these people. And I said to them, would you mind if I write up a story about what it is that you're going through? Because nobody says that side of the story. They always
Yep.
kind of blatantly saying home affairs and almost painting every single human being behind that desk with that same brush. I sat there for 6 hours. Not one of them took a break. Not one of them had an opportunity to have a sip of water or coffee. They were just at it constantly. So thank you for raising that as well. I'll tag you in my post to Home Affairs and you can add some comments there.
No problem.
Jamila, your turn to just head into the next question.
Get into the next question, which we move on to Grace now. In what ways do you incorporate grace, Cole, into your daily interactions with others?
Well, I think when you grew up and there was a lot of trauma in your life, I do a lot of reflections at the beach. I don't want to give my location where I go stand at the beach because too many of you guys are going to go park at my same spot. Then it's no more peace. But I think where I incorporated grace is where I realized that you are not going through this for yourself. You are actually going through this so you can be a message to someone else. You are actually, and it's a difficult one to digest because you're like, but I just want to be normal. I just have a normal job and normal process and a normal life and I'll be fine. But I think when you look at that word grace, it is something that you do not even deserve. And the way I incorporated that was when I realized that sometimes I'm going to have a tough week, but if I do not make sense of it and document it and learn from it, I could not in the next week offer that grace to someone else. And it's not, it's easier said than done. Easier said than done. But the beauty of it is when you see life impact and influenced and transformed, not because of money, but just because of storytelling, just because of a life that is now saying, let me tell you about it. You mentioned earlier on, I went to Harvard and Oxford. When I landed up at Harvard and Oxford, do you think I went to go give a thesis on something? Never. I told my story. They were so blown away by my story about how I persevered and endured. And so I think the grace that I still carry around is this is me. Like I said early on, this is me, a mess, but allow my life to be that message. Maya Angelou, she says that people will forget what you said, but never forget the way you made them feel. And I think that's how I incorporated grace in me.
And I agree with you. I think, you know, your story is so impactful. And I say yours as a collective, you know, people, that's all people need to do is just to acknowledge who they are and to share this. And it's unbelievable what support and help and change you can then effect on, even if it's just one person's life. And Anissa, we've had this discussion before, and I said to you, when I left my marriage, you know, it was a thought in my mind or something that I put to myself, a challenge that I put to myself, that at some stage in my life, I wish that I could be the person, just for one person out there, to hold space, to listen to their story, to listen to their insecurities, doubts on what it is that they were planning to do with their lives and where they were going. And to be able to share that with someone is already half your problem solved, right? When you go through it yourself, there's so much that you pressure that you put on yourself. Am I doing it because I'm selfish? Am I doing this because I want things to be my way always? But when you share it and you have that sounding board out there, even if it's just one person who can guide you along, or to say, you know what, just let it all out. Let it out. It puts you on such a positive pathway and allows you then to pay that forward to someone else.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think I'd like to, we 10 minutes to go, Cole. So as I mentioned to you at the start, yes, there are questions, but we will flow, and your passion shines through, and so we will just flow with that passion and the energy that comes through, Cole. But I'd like to go into really just a bit more specific example or a moment in your life when you felt the impact of grace, either in giving or receiving. Can you give one example of that?
I think it has to be when there was a time in my life when I think because of me walking outside trying to find myself, I started knocking on the wrong doors. And if you knock on the wrong doors, some doors might actually open. And if you're not ready for what's behind those doors, there's consequences. You end up with consequences that you can fix and some that you have to live with. Um, One of those examples would be that uh, growing up, first of all, I was in a very, or I was actually abused from a very young age within the family home, from different people. And when I eventually walked out and I started speaking out, I only did this after high school. And I went to my mother and I gave her my hand and I said, listen, I want to introduce you to who I really am. You don't know me. Let me tell you who I am. Let me introduce myself to you. She cried because I was about to tell her what happened when I was 5. You see that woman you trusted at the house at 7? This is what she did. You see what happened over there? I didn't even go to school that day. That day, this day. Mom, I know how it feels like to run away from a consequence and not take responsibility. And she was like, is this my son? Did all these people do this? I trusted them around you. And my mom never really reacted by going the legal route. And I questioned it for many years. Like, why? What is the reason why wouldn't she go there? Why wouldn't she pursue them? And why can't they pay for that? And where grace was then, where I felt like I had to give grace was I didn't know their story. And it's a difficult one when you are the victim and you say, I feel like something should happen. I spoke out, but I didn't know their story. And now I'm in a space where I'm dealing with both sides, the victim and the perpetrator. And I'm saying to people, it is good to speak out. And it's good to react to whatever people are saying on the other side when they do speak out. But do we know the stories on both sides? You too can make such a big impact if both of you could get to the space and understand each other's story before someone else decides for you what to do. And that's where I had to give grace, where it was quite difficult.
Can I just ask a question, Cole? Because your mom and yourself seem to be very close. And as a single mom, you have such wonderful things to say about her. What took you so long to be able to confide in her about it?
My mom at the time was being abused herself, physically abused in the home. And so when she finally realized enough is enough, we drove to Johannesburg. She said, listen, I'm going to leave this man. The whole trip from Cape Town to Joburg, she drove alone. She told us, listen, it's going to be us alone now. I'm doing this for you guys. I'm leaving this man. There's a better life for us without him. And when she made that bold step, that was the first thing that gave me the the bravery to say it's time to speak out. It's time that I now make within the house context. Before that, I could not see me burdening her with more of what I was dealing with when I saw what she was dealing with. I saw her having to run. I would remember laying in the evening, and when they would start arguing, I would always wait for that first boom to hit. And I would never be able to sleep. I would go stand in front of the room, I'll knock, I'll say, come out, please, mom, just leave it. Don't go on anymore. I would be the only son that would be standing by that door because I couldn't handle domestic violence. But that was a turning point for me when she made the choice to say, there is more to life. I made the choice to say, then it's time to introduce who I really am.
That's amazing, because as a single mom myself, and my son was 6 when I left my marriage, the one thing that you crave for and that you want is for your child to be able to come to you and be honest and tell you everything that they are going through. Because as it is, as a single parent, you're juggling and you're trying to manage your corporate life, and you're trying to manage the home life. And many times, like I left KZN and came to Johannesburg with no support structure here at all. We knew nobody here. So it was so important for me to know that my son could come to me and talk to me about certain things. But it's difficult, especially with boy children, because they don't want to put that extra pressure on you as a single mom, And that's, I would go back to what you said. It's so important to have these discussions, that open space. And this only happens in the home environment with your nucleus family, one-on-ones, and making sure. For me, I had to make sure I sat my son down, and even if I asked him a question as how was your day, it was always okay, mom, fine, mom. Just so not to put any more pressure on me. But you have to persist, and you have to dig deeper, and you have to make sure that they open up as young men, and that it's okay for you to be vulnerable. It's okay, and that in itself is an act of bravery, right? To be able to show your vulnerability. So
I'd like to just add in, Jamila, you remind me always of, like, I might be the daily nagging mom with the petty stuff, but when it comes to the big stuff, I have told my kids that no matter what it is, no matter how bad it is, no matter if there are going to be severe consequences, I remain calm and composed so that they can feel that I am that safe space. Is it easy to do? No. Depending on the context of what, the mistake or the error that they've done, no. But I would much rather them feeling safe with me, and as Cole said, knocking on that wrong door that opens up and they feel that sense of belonging and acceptance, than that would just defeat the whole object of being able to bring authenticity in. They would continuously wear these masks. Now we have 1.5 minutes left, and we didn't get through most of the stuff, but I am very grateful, Cole, to your vulnerability. I think I'd like to ask one final question in closing, and that is the integration question. How do you see the interplay between grit, grace, and gratitude in achieving personal growth and success?
I would love to answer it in this way. You get a band playing, you get a drummer, pianist, and you get someone playing on the keyboard, on the guitar. They play different instruments, but guess what? Although they play different instruments, when they play together, they actually find balance in harmony. And I think that is where the thin line is. It's like what Jamila was saying earlier on, how do I balance all of these things? It's when all three can speak to each other independently. Sometimes they happen all at the same time. They are different processes, but how do what I do at home speak to what you do at work, speak to what he does at school? And I see that's how that basically helps with your personal growth. It's when different areas can come together in different contexts, but actually find harmony. And I think that's where balance is for me within that context.
So Jamila, any closing comments to conclude, and then I will just summarize at the end?
I just want to commend you, Cole. You know, when I see my son, you know, I hope that he is as well balanced as you, as he grows into a young man, as he perhaps one day will have a family and will be able to show and be vulnerable enough to 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 have a balance with his masculine and feminine side, and to acknowledge both, and to have that confidence in acknowledging both. And it's just been such a fantastic hour. It's just gone way too quickly, and I really do hope that we can have you back on, because there's still so much more that I'd really love to speak to you about, and I'm sure our viewers would like to, you know, to ask questions about what they are going through. And hopefully, in the foreseeable future, we will definitely have you back if you have the time.
So on that note, I want to say thank you, Cole. And I think in summary, what I got from you out of today's conversation is step up and step into your truth, but do so within this moment, within this now. No matter how dark and ugly it gets, be okay with it, embrace it, be an allowance of it. For those that are holding space, we've said it before, don't hijack that space. I think that's what Cole's message is, just being there and honoring that space for that individual. And then allowing your story to be bigger than you, because it's in that story that others can feel there is purpose in that pain. And there's there's definitely going from the fire to being fierce. And I think that's the core message that I'm getting out, Cole, is that let's move away from fear and become more fierce in our endeavor to become our authentic selves. I'd love to acknowledge more of the comments, but we have to conclude. We will respond to them on the post itself. Thank you to those that have participated so actively. Any final closing comment on your part, Cole, before we say goodbye? And then on that note, please do stay on, Cole and Jamila, and then we will conclude.
Well, I just want to say thank you to you two ladies for allowing this platform. I think it's definitely needed. And I think a final point would be that I don't think South Africa is struggling with a political, economic, spiritual. I think we're struggling with a leadership crisis. I think there's a lack of leaders within our homes, our churches, our government, our spaces, our streets. And if you are a man or young man out there and you're listening to this, I would love to say to you that there's a leader in you that needs to be discovered. There's a lion in you that needs to be discovered. There's this Mufasa. Go watch Lion King tonight, by the way. If you're listening to the show, go watch Lion King. You need to be the Mufasa guy. And don't be shy to bring out your role. Bring out your role. Even though it sounds like little Simba when you start. But you know what? Bring out your role and don't forget to make time for you. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you so much. On that note, we'll see you guys next week again. Goodbye for now.